Welcome to a new Energy Crew podcast. Me, your host, JP Warren. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in today. This is the second Saturday of the new year. I want to thank everyone out there for all the. I've been getting some really good feedback and support. A lot of good comments about kind of some of the subjects we've been covering over, at least recently. It's been the subjects. Some of them have been pretty vulnerable, which been the five imposter syndrome. It's been some conversations about entrepreneurship. It's been conversations on networking, kind of tips and tricks about that. And I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in. This round, the episode today. I've been trying stuff out randomly. Well, I remember when I first started my first podcast. Again, this is all about kind of being uncomfortable and keeping things interesting for myself, keeping things fun for me. So when I first started my first podcast, I would always start off with 5 questions, and I would ask the guest 5 questions, and it would just kind of it would be a great conversation. Don't get me wrong. However, it would really kind of get stale to me. And but I was comfortable with those 5 questions. I was behind a microphone for the first time. I was behind a camera. Wasn't really comfortable. So if I had those 5 questions, I had a guidebook. Well, after a couple months, it started getting boring. Doing the same questions, doing the same routine. So I changed it up. I asked maybe 2 questions of those 5, and I kind of left room for it to grow organically. And then I got to a point with my podcast where it's like I really didn't want any preparation. I kind of wanted to have a genuine conversation with someone and be interested and not have preset questions. I usually find those are the conversations that I get the most out of. Those conversations I find the most value in because it's a conversation with someone that I really don't know much about, and we're diving into the details. So this go around, previously on the podcast that I was doing solo, I would prep out big time. I would really kind of list out what I want to do. I got to say hello to my wife, my mother, who are tuning in. I'm doing this on Instagram Live. If you're listening to this on it's a release date, so they're tuning in now. So I got to say hello. But the last couple of podcasts that I've done, I've really kind of mapped out what I want to talk about. It may not sound it because I still use a lot of filler words, but I did map it out. So today I kind of jotted down what I want to talk about. However, I am not there's not really a lot of plans here. So again, being uncomfortable is kind of one of those things I'm pushing myself into this year. I recommend you do the same thing because that's when we grow. That's when we find things that we maybe we find interest in and we discover. And that's kind of when we test ourselves. And that's kind of what I try to tell my daughter is to kind of be uncomfortable in situations because that's where you find your voice. So podcast, the episode right now we're going to talk about right now, I kind of want to discuss get back into the imposter syndrome side of things because there has been a lot of feedback that I've received from whenever I do the imposter syndrome podcast. It's usually positive. It's usually like, hey, I'm going through this. I got a nice message from someone that I was talking to that I actually used to work with my first job. She reached out that, her and her husband were talking about this and she really appreciates the content. So look, again, at the end of the day, if it helps one person, that's the goal of this. So, but I know it's probably helped more people than that because that study that was done in 1980s, what is it? If you've listened before, over how many % of people suffer imposter syndrome or experience at one point in their life? That's 70%. So that's the majority of people. So I'm going to kind of share kind of personal experiences this week alone, what happened with imposter syndrome and how I kind of dealt with that. And also kind of give you the framework on kind of whenever you have the imposter syndrome kind of popping up or those negative limiting self-beliefs that are total bogus. All right, then you don't have to pay attention to. All right, so you have to realize that's not you. It's a voice inside your head. It's a character inside your head that you don't have to listen to, and you kind of tell to shut up, and you kind of tell them who you really are. So the first experience. So there's been kind of I think probably 4 experiences that I can name that I felt that my imposter syndrome kind of stand up and scream. And when that happens, I've gotten really good just because I've kind of done the work. I've done the work when I face these self-limiting beliefs, when I face these discussions these internal discussions, these internal monologues of myself, where it's like, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you can't do this. Who are you? No one's going to listen to you. Like, who the hell wants to listen to you, JP? So I have found a way. And again, this is part of this isn't why I got into coaching, but this is something that I enjoy about coaching is helping people with their self-limiting beliefs and their imposter syndrome. So I kind of want to go through and kind of the internal monologue that was going on, what I did, and honestly, it can help you too. But again, it takes work, and it doesn't matter how much work you do; it's still there, and it's still a fight that you have to take. But anyway, it's worth and it's enjoyable. So this week we kicked off Exec Crew. And Exec Crew, for those that don't know, is a new mastermind executive development program that my wife and I kicked off with our first meeting on Wednesday. And it's one of those things where my imposter syndrome was really kind of going off before. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm learning. So, for example, before I probably would have worked all night on the presentation to make sure it's perfect. I would have spent hours and hours and hours looking at the font of the forms that the members we're gonna start doing them together and all that stuff. I would have dialed in these details so much because remember, if you listen to the previous podcast, one of the types of imposter syndrome is perfectionism, and that's what I was going for. But actually, I did a good job of saying, you know what, this is good enough. This presentation is good enough. Yeah, I can spend more time on this away from my family, but this is good enough. The forms, they were good enough. So when it got to the perfectionist side of me, I was able to release that. However, when it got to my role in that meeting, that's when my imposter syndrome popped up. It was so Exec Crew is a mastermind executive development program. We have 18 members, and I think there were probably 13 in this meeting or 12 in this meeting. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, who the hell am I to lead this meeting? Who am I to stand in front of these, founders, these executives, these leaders, these achievers? Who the hell am I to stand up here and kind of bring them together? And not only that, coach and share some personal and professional development strategies, and also setting goals together. Who the hell was I? That was going on in my mind. I've never been in this position before. I've been listening to, I've always seen Tony Robinson, but never really heard him. But I downloaded his book and I was thinking, who the hell am I? I'm not Tony Robinson in front of these people. This is the first Exec Crew I've done. And my mind really started racing. However, I quickly noticed that was my imposter syndrome chiming up. And if those that listened before, my imposter syndrome's name is Colin Robinson. For those that know what we do in the shadows, Colin Robinson is a character that lives with the vampires, and he's an energy vampire. He's just negative and just kind of one of those people that you don't want to invite to a dinner party necessarily. And you definitely don't want living inside your brain telling you that you're not good enough. So I immediately identified that was Colin Robinson. So step one is identify when it's happening. It takes self-reflection to identify when these negative thoughts are coming up, when these limiting beliefs are kind of piping in. So I initially started feeling a little self-doubt, and then it started kind of snowballing. And it was like, well, who the hell am I? Who the hell? I stopped myself. I said, Colin, you're in the room. Welcome. Sit down. I'm going to put you over here, and I'm going to explain to you. This is the second step. I'm going to explain to you and provide evidence why I belong up in front of that group, why I belong sharing this information with all these executives and founders. So step two was separate myself and realize all these negative voices and all this negative limiting beliefs wasn't part of me. That was just ingrained up here from probably growing up. Whether it's not making the team, or whether it's not making an A, whatever, it doesn't matter where it came from. It was there. So the first part was kind of identifying. The second part was separating, realizing that wasn't me. And then this is kind of the fun part where we're not a lot of people know. And this is kind of something that I encourage you out there to do. Whenever you start having these negative limiting beliefs, and you start that imposter syndrome voice pops up in your head, starts kind of chirping at you and kind of poking at you on why you're not that person. Hey, you're not that guy. So I immediately started kind of putting down evidence of why no, I was that guy, Colin. Like, let me explain why. I've got my certificate, Colin. I've created this course. Not only that, I've used all this stuff in this program to help me achieve my goals and to kind of get out of my rut. So all this stuff that I'm talking about works. I am an entrepreneur. I've been in business for going on 3 years now. So I started listing evidence of No, I do belong in front of that room. And second, and then I started kind of listening. Well, not only that, but these people that are going to be in the room, they signed up for this, didn't they? They made a financial commitment, an investment to be in this room. So they have faith in you. You got to have faith in yourself. So again, I started kind of listing all this stuff, listing all these evidence-based reasons why I should be in front of that group and doing what I envisioned when we first had this idea of exec crew. So again, listing evidence as to why. Then what you do, you take all that evidence. Okay, so that kind of, again, you're in court with yourself. You're trying to prove to your imposter syndrome that they're full of yeah, we're doing live. They're full of baloney, all right, and you're not. So again, separate. First off, reflect, separate, then list the evidence. And then that's when you start making the statements. That's when you kind of start being your own coach. That's when you start making your I am statements. So the IS to I am journey, which is what what I'm focused on when it comes to my coaching services. I'm trying to help people separate from their imposter syndrome and realize it's not them by creating from the IS to the I am journey. So this part of it, I start taking that evidence and you start making affirmations. Call it affirmations, call it whatever, but I am. I think the sentence "I am" is extremely powerful because that is such charged up thing. You're talking to yourself subconsciously, consciously. You're saying "I am this." So my wife and I, even my daughter, we are very, again, we talked about this in another podcast. We are very against negative self-talk. Even as a joke, I've caught myself slipping a couple times, making like self-deprecating jokes. Try not to do that. Try to pull back because at the end of the day, we don't know subconsciously if we're being serious or not. And we don't need to be negative towards ourselves because oftentimes words and how we talk changes our realities, changes our perceptions, which is our reality. So I start, you start, I start, you start, whoever is in the situation facing their imposter syndrome, start making your I am statements. I am this person that should be up here. I am a certified coach. I am someone that has used all this stuff and that stuff. So you start kind of talking to yourself and then you make your statements and you start telling yourself these statements. By the end of it, the energy that should be coming through you and how you're talking to yourself and the way you're talking to yourself should be, if anything, a cheerleader. It should be a coach. You know what, JP? Get out there. You're going to crush it. You're going to do it. It got to the point where I was so confident in myself to lead that meeting. Again, because I've done the work, I've had these feelings. I was able to separate real quick. So by the time the meeting started, I was so confident to get up that meeting. I knew there was nobody else in that room to do that. I was that person. I told myself, I am this person. I am that guy to lead this meeting. You start telling yourself these affirmations, you believe them. So I felt after that meeting, I felt like I was in the zone. I felt in the flow. I felt in control. I felt confident. It felt good. And that would have been a very different result or very different energy that I put in that meeting or leadership ability if I walked in already doubting myself. If I walked in already thinking, if that little, that little Colin Robinson on my shoulder saying, hey, JP, you're not this guy. Stay in your lane. So again, number one, identify. Number two, separate. Number three, I don't know why there's a number three, identify. Number three, sorry, something on my screen. Number three, you put your evidence down. You bring your imposter syndrome to court and tell why they're full of shit. All right. Number four, you create your I am statements. I am is one of the most powerful sentences out there. What you put after that holds so much power. So again, you create your I am statements and say them out loud. Don't just say them out loud. You believe them, you feel them out loud, and that changes the energy. So that was the first thing. And honestly, leaving that room, and I was charged up. I'm still charged up. I'm still waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning thinking about that experience. And it would have been a very different experience if I actually let Colin Robinson come in and drive that meeting. Second thing that happened today. Again, this was something where someone reached out to me and said, hey, JP, your name came up and all that stuff. We want to include you and we want to do an article interview of you in a magazine. Whenever this happens, this is a cool experience because I remember when I first started Connection Crew, my first company, when I first started Connection Crew, some of the things that I put on the whiteboard, again, I'm a big believer in dreaming big. I'm a big believer in chasing those dreams and just having visions. Just go for it. Just dream big and just put it on the board. Who cares? No one's going to say no. Only you're going to tell yourself no. So on the board, I thought a big achievement was, to get recognition. And what that looked like? That looked like speaker engagements that also looked like, press magazine articles. So I got an email requesting me an interview in a magazine article. And again, Colin immediately popped up on my shoulder, my imposter syndrome, and said, "Who the hell wants to listen to you talk, JP?" I couldn't agree more. That's why I'm doing this podcast. So immediately, it was the same approach, but it was a different message I was telling myself. So again, my imposter syndrome, I identified it immediately popped up and was telling myself that who the hell wants to read about you in a magazine, all that stuff. So shut it down. All right. Put Colin in the corner and I start putting evidence against Colin. All right. I say, okay, you're going to tell me that no one wants to hear me. You're going to tell me that no one wants to listen to me. All right. Well, here's some evidence. Well, even if no one listens to me, but why I don't belong in this article, here's some evidence why. So I started listening. Well, I'm doing some pretty cool stuff over here that I do want to talk about. I've been in 2 or 3 I was in Oil Women's and also Canvas Rebel magazine before. So I've done this before. So I started kind of listing evidence to tell Colin, to tell my imposter syndrome. Actually, whether people want to listen to me or not, I belong here. I am the person for this article. I am someone that has some pretty cool stuff going on that I do want to share. And I am someone that, if I'm asked to do this, it's an honor. So I'm going to put it out there, and whether someone reads it or not, it doesn't matter. It's still a cool experience. So again, I was able to separate, list evidence why I was that person that should have been that article, and then I started saying the affirmations, and then I started believing it. I still haven't done that magazine article yet, but just because I'm allowing a little space to get all this other stuff done. But I am going to be approaching that tomorrow. It's on my list to do, on my task list, and I will be approaching that. I'm doing it. And I'm confident about it. And whether it's a good article, a bad article, I'm fine with that too. It's going to be, look, it's a cool experience that I can show my dog. How about that? All right. The third, actually the third thing was very similar. There was a committee, an energy committee that reached out to me that asked me to speak at a conference. And again, that goes back to that vision board that I had. That imposter syndrome is saying, who the hell wants to listen to you at an energy conference? Again, I separated, listed evidence. Okay, well, here's the first evidence that somebody asked me. So that's number one. Number two, I've spoke before about the subject that this person wants. So obviously, I know something about the subject. So I am someone that's capable of talking, and I am someone that they want at this. So that's, 2 pretty big pieces of evidence. And then I started kind of going down, and then it kind of came a realization, was like, I am someone that even if I am this person or not, I want to do this experience because it's uncomfortable. So you are this person. So I started telling myself I am this person. So again, I'm jumping on that, whether I'm the person or not for that, it doesn't matter. I'm telling myself I am, and I'm going to do the experience regardless. All right. The last, not the last thing. Well, yeah, this was another one. Again, to kind of beat the dead horse, I was reaching out to a different pool of members, sponsors, whatever you want to call it, for my crew club, my operator, producer, networking events. And again, I felt like a little fish out of water, little fish in a big pond, whatever you want to call it. Again, it got to the point where it's because I've done the work, and this is the work that we can do, that I ask you to do, is realize that separate yourself from those self-doubts. Put evidence against against your imposter syndrome, telling you that you shouldn't do it, or you're not that person. And then you literally beat that imposter syndrome down with I am affirmations. And you get to the point where even if you say you don't feel it, keep saying it, because something builds with you. So you got to get into it. You got to feel it. Keep talking to yourself, get energized, and you say those I am statements. And I guess the final one I got to say is that whenever I look at my wife, I wonder, am I like, who is this JP? Who are you? Well, I start putting the evidence game. I am someone that deserves this. I am someone with a wife that listens to the podcast. I am someone with a wife that listens to the podcast that I better plug and give her a shout out. So yes, so that's it. I want to thank everyone out there for tuning in for Energy Crew podcast today. Again, if you're facing these self-limiting beliefs, totally get it. It's completely normal. A lot of people have it. You know, I sit in rooms with all these leaders and executives and founders and all this stuff. Everyone faces these self-limiting beliefs. Everyone faces these feelings that they aren't the right person that should be in the room or at the table. That's all bullshit. Listen to yourself and understand that, number one, that is not you. You are the person that should be in the room. You are the person that's ready for that role, ready for that opportunity. And you are that person that's okay with being uncomfortable. So again, throw evidence for your side, defeat that imposter syndrome, put it in its place, and it changes your attitude. It changes your energy. It changes your perception. And at the end of the day, it gives you the best results. So I employ everyone out there to try it out. And again, keep fighting that fight against your imposter syndrome. It is not you. You are that person. You can do it, and you can achieve, and you can succeed. So thank you everyone for tuning in for Energy Crew Podcast. And I guess if you're enjoying this, please like, share it on Instagram, wherever, LinkedIn, wherever you listen to it. And I guess that's it. And leave a review and all that fun stuff if you want. But again, thank you for everyone out there. Hope this helps, and y'all have a good day.